greatest danger facing our world is the marriage of militant Islam with nuclear weapons. To defeat ISIS and let Iran get nuclear weapons would be to win the battle but lose the war. We can't let that happen.
Our guest is uniquely qualified to bring us the perspective of what others saw from the Bibi speech before Congress, a U.S. Army veteran who focuses on the Islamic world from the website MahdiWatch.org. Timothy Furnish is in the MidPoint house. Tim, thanks so much for joining us today.
Glad to be here.
Certainly you heard me talk about this leading into it, but there are those who feel that, quite frankly, that the Prime Minister made things even worse and really didn't say much at all. When you hear that, what's your first reaction?
Well, I don't agree with that. I think both sides really are being extremists on this issue in general about Iran and specifically about Netanyahu's speech. Netanyahu was correct, and I thought quite graciously, did it quite graciously, in pointing out that Iran, reminding us that our own State Department has Iran listed as the world's foremost sponsor of terror, pointing out that there are problems with supporting Iran over against ISIS. That said, although he didn't say it last night, I quite disagree with a number of things that Prime Minister Netanyahu said in the past. I mean, he is on record at least twice as calling the Islamic Republic of Iran a messianic apocalyptic cult. And I simply think that is a total misreading of both Twelver Shia theology and of Iranian politics.
Well, but would you not also admit, though, that the Iranian government is one that, quite frankly, and according to many experts, seems to run completely afoul of the Iranian people? We are told the Iranian people are the ones who want to be part of the Western world, but the government will not let them do that. They keep them down. That almost seems like, in some instances, I guess you could call it a militaristic cult.
Well, I think that can be overstated, though, Mr. Leonard, because there has been data that shows that a significant portion of the population of Iran does support the Ayatollahs. A large proportion clearly doesn't, as we saw with the aborted Green Revolution and so forth. But one thing that it seems clear, if you look at recent Iranian politics, certainly since the revolution in 1979, most people in Iran tend to close ranks behind the government, even the bearded turban government, when they're threatened from outside. And look, I harbor no illusions about Iran. And unlike probably everyone in that chamber last night, I've actually been to Iran. I've studied it for a number of years. It is an unsavory government. It is, of course, I agree with the assessment, it's the world's foremost sponsor of terrorism. What I disagree with, however, is this idea that's taken root in my own party, the Republican Party, and in many evangelical Christian circles, this firm conviction that Iran wants to use nuclear weapons, and I think Netanyahu seems to share this view, that Iran wants to use nuclear weapons to destroy Israel and spark the coming of their messianic figure, the 12th Imam. I don't think that's accurate at all.
All right, but let's dig into that here for just a moment here, because there are people who would argue with you and they would say, wait a minute, the Imams, the Ayatollahs, they have said for years they want to wipe Israel from the face of the earth. They want to wipe the great Satan from the face of the earth, and there are those people afraid that if you put a nuclear bomb in the hands of people who want to do that, that would be the first thing that they may think about. Isn't that fair to say that at least that's not something out of line here?
No, I disagree. I do think it's out of line if you look at what Twelver Shiism teaches, and if you look at Iranian geopolitical statements and the political statements. Iran, and don't misunderstand me on this, I understand Iran, at least the clerical regime ruling the country, greatly dislikes Israel. I harbor no illusions about that. However, if you look at what they say, Khomeini, Ahmadinejad, Rouhani has enough sense to keep his mouth shut about this for the most part. But the leadership that's talked about this over the last 25, 30 years has said things like, and it may seem like a grammatical argument, but it's really not, that Israel will be wiped from the pages of history, that Israel will disappear eventually. And again, I went to a conference where they talked about this sort of thing in Iran a few years ago. I've studied this. I've studied the documents and what they say. It seems to be that the belief in the return of the 12th Imam in Iranian ruling circles is that when the 12th Imam returns, he's the one who will take care of this. And look, I understand some of my Israeli friends, a lot of my friends that are Jewish say, well, you know what, I'm not sure that I'd want to stake the existence of Israel on that sort of academic
You would have to agree
exercise.
that that's a pretty savvy thing to say.
That's a good point. I agree with that. But I think that this constant And again, Netanyahu did not do it in the speech recently, but he's done it before, and a lot of people that support him do this vociferously. This idea that Iran wants nuclear weapons to destroy Israel in order to spark the coming of the 12th Imam, and that's why they want them, I think is profoundly wrong. I think it's clear Iran wants
Tim, I'm going to ask you
weapons.
to stand by here for just a moment. We're going to take a break. We are all out of time. We're going to come back, welcome in someone else here. We're going to continue this conversation because you bring up a fascinating point, which we will further right here on MidPoint.